Hi everyone, if you are not new to the AI space, you've probably heard about a new product released by the Chinese startup Monica called Manes, which is a so-called general AI agent, meaning that it can do diverse tasks, from writing a landing page to booking a flight for you. Today we are going to talk about agents. What are they? How do they work? And are they bringing us any closer to the artificial general intelligence, or AGI?
I'm Giorgio Zinaro.
I'm Ivan Peña, and this is Bootstrap for Cash. How are you doing today, Giorgio?
Yeah, I'm stoked. Unitext is out on the stores and we're building things. So doing great.
Finally. Why did it take us so long to publish it?
Because we are perfectionists, I guess. No, it's not true.
It's not only.
Well, it is true.
Not only because of that.
It's not our fault for once. We thought it was going to be easier with Chrome extensions, but no, Google again. We used to have to fight with them because of the Play Store. It turns out the Web Store is probably even worse.
Mm-hmm. Because at least the Play Store, you do the first review, and then the next one is just 1 hour, not even. But every time we publish a new version of the Chrome extension, it takes days for reviewing.
Yeah, apparently I read on the docs, every review is the same as the first review. It's just as thorough. They even mentioned something about not minifying code, which makes me think they have a human read it, which would justify the time at least, why it takes 3 days. But yeah, so it seems at least it's out now, and probably we can start with the distribution next week. Now it's the weekend, so it doesn't make much sense. Well,
no. So today we are going to talk about AI agents. How would you define an AI agent, Giorgio?
I will probably ask ChatGPT to define it for me.
Are you doing it?
But let's give it a shot. Because I guess it can be many things. It feels like the definition of it is moving every day. Whenever you read about it, you get this thing going around. So it's a different thing for anyone, depending on what they're trying to sell you. But for me, I'd say that the most interesting thing that defines an agent is this idea that you can get an LLM, a language model, to execute some task, some programmatic task. So something that you would before do by writing and running some code or clicking somewhere in a browser. Any of that is an agent. And there's quite some difference, right? From just getting text in and out in a pure fashion. That's how what initially LLMs provided was, let's say, just a chat, and eventually agent is what lets us go. It's what lets us go beyond chatbots, which is what we like so much, right? That's what we said we want to build with C Lambda. It's one thing to have a toy that can take text in and throw some text out. And I can see also why all the negativity around that. It's like, okay, it's a interesting experiment. It's fun maybe, but at some point the use seems pretty limited, right? I mean, how far can you take that?
And actually, there is a misconception, right? Many people call ChatGPT referring to the model. But it's actually not ChatGPT, it's a GPT model. The chat is built on top of it, like an interface for the person to interact with the chat and get some answers, right?
Yeah, it's like you're conditioning the model to believe that it is a chat, but for the model, I mean, it's just generating text, really. It's truly a channel to the model's brain, whatever you want to, whichever way you want to conceive it. But it's just the model is literally there to generate text, and it's also deciding when to hand over to you. It's pretty limited if you stop at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But then AI agents means that through that text, the agent can then decide when it needs not to just to hand over the conversation, because again that's kind of limited, but it can actually decide when it needs a tool to do something.
And this is related a bit to the topic we discussed 2 or 3 episodes ago, right? About MCP
Mm-hmm.
and how to call different tools for different LLMs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, MCP in the end is very much related. Because it's a way to let the LLM know what tools does it have available, right? So, I mean, even if I need to decide, I need to do a job in the real world, and I realized I don't have the right screwdriver, maybe I know that I cannot do that. And the idea of MCP is a bit the same. Like you get your toolbox available to the model and say, hey, this is everything you could do. And the beautiful thing, obviously, is because we are using natural language, is that the model only needs to know about what those tools could do in natural language. So you can go pretty broad in what you're giving to your LLM, the tools that you make available to your LLM. And that's really powerful. This orchestration capability,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you combine it, that you could combine it with reasoning. Then, so you really get the model going through the steps that it could perform to do something, and then it has some tools available.
Mm-hmm.
So it can go and fetch information from the real world, or it can produce side effects in the real world. I mean, you can take it as far as you like, right? Anything that you can do through a computer today. Let's say you are, I don't know, booking a flight, or I mean, say you have a smart home, you are, I don't know, switching on a light or opening your door. Anything that you can orchestrate to any automated electronic means through a computer, now you can make it available to an LLM. So yeah, I guess it's pretty damn powerful if used correctly.
Mm-hmm. There is this Chinese company called Monica that just created or released this product called Manus, and it got the same hype as DeepSeek.
Yeah.
And the reason behind it is because they claim that it can do anything, right? So it can do from building a landing page for you, to booking a flight, to do financial advisory. So how is this possible? And what's happening behind the scenes? Is this just an agent? Or what is it? It's a set of agents? Could you please give us a bit more details?
Well, obviously, we would have to ask them, right? We didn't. I couldn't know much.
Okay, tell me your idea. Like, what do you think about it?
I tell you my opinion about it. Right? I'm on the waiting list, so I try to be on the waiting list. You have to tell them why you want to use it, like give them an idea why you want to use it. And in my opinion, that's already telling. That's already saying something.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's probably expensive for them to run, or whatever the reason could be. But in my opinion, any such tool, at least as it stands today, it's just limited in the set of things it can do towards the outside world. So saying that it can do anything is a pretty wild statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what does that even mean? Like, Manus, can you build a house? Like, anything, right? Can you launch a rocket? It can be anything, right? Doesn't make much sense. So obviously the definition of anything will be adapted as it is convenient. And in this specific case, in my opinion, at least from what I could see, for example, on their landing page, obviously they've got a bunch of very useful tools available to their LLM, or to their set of LLMs. It's probably going to be multiple language models interacting, and definitely, like, they can browse the internet. Now it already sounds boring, but it was such a big thing. And now we have more and more tools coming up, actually, browser use, and I mean, deep research. There are many tools that in different ways can use a browser, can crawl through the internet and do some searches and follow links and extract information as they need it to then produce some other outcome. This is obviously something they can do, right?
When you say crawl the internet, you mean opening a browser and do some searches, right? Because crawling the internet, I mean, the foundational models, GPT and Claude and so on, they already can do that, right? No, Anthropic, sorry, not Claude.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Claude, I think they do it now as well.
Well, we should, probably I didn't use the right word, right? Let's say they can surf the web in real time. That's the important difference. Crawling, when we say crawling, we usually mean something else, right? We mean following through all the links that a crawler can find. In fact, that's something that, for example, search engines do. I mean, that's what Google has been doing for 20, 30 almost years now, right? Crawling the internet, downloading everything they can, indexing it. Obviously, also at training time, that's also something they do at training time. They crawl the internet, they get as much information as possible into their model as they're training it. That's a different discussion. Surfing the web, though, on the other end, means, for example, that a model can, I don't know, go to
Booking,
Instagram, let's say, because there's also that thing, right? They can go and find something that was posted today, and through a vision model, they can understand what's in the image, what's on the browser screen. This is much more than anything that we could do even just 1 year ago. It can decide that it will go and search for that specific page and understand what's on the page, not just what's in the HTML, not just in the text, but really understand an image, have a vision model, understand what's in an image. That's absolutely wild. Or it can open a browser and, as you said, do things. It can open a browser and click some buttons and probably authenticate too. That would open up an interesting discussion about authentication and the agent acting on your behalf. But let's say you can have side effects, so you could go and do things through a browser or through an API, right? Because in the end, that also doesn't matter so much. The same thing we discussed earlier with MCP. Usually, it's more convenient for MCP to give it access to some APIs, because in the end, you can be more specific in what you can do. In my opinion, I feel like it's similar to the way we use terminals, the way we use CLIs. We never really abandoned that user interface, at least us as software engineers, but also power users. Even if you go to the Windows world, which I'm not very much a fan of, but if you look at Windows system administration, even there, many things are still done in the CLI, even though they pushed so hard to have everything available through user interfaces. Take also infrastructure as code there as well. Of course, there are dashboards for anything, but ideally, cloud engineers, let's say professionals, then tend to go and do things through code because it's so much more maintainable and easy to understand and to share with others and to reuse.
It can be historized.
There are so many advantages. You can version it, so you know what has changed and when, who changed what. And so the idea that LLMs can use text and therefore, for example, APIs, like, for example, JSON APIs to interact with whatever system is very powerful. In my opinion, that's still where 90% of the attention will be. So yes, using a browser is useful, especially for getting information out, the same as we do as humans. But then the ability of interacting with APIs and writing code to do things. And this is another thing I saw Manus through in the demos. That's something that he does a lot. So if you want to know something more, if you're asking about something more concrete, if you wanted to do some math and some calculations, some analysis, it will not just try to conjure some information out of thin air through the LLM capability, because that wouldn't make much sense. It does some, let's say, some research, it does some data analysis. So it takes data, it gets data out, and then writes some Python code to analyze it. That's really smart. I mean, that's the best of both worlds. That's the best you can get from the LLM, orchestrating the entire activity. And then, the actual programming language doing what it can do best. So the data analysis and actually crunching through numbers.
So this concept, general AI agent, which is what Manus is called, what is it? So we have a set of AI agents working with each other, and we have like one trying to orchestrate them all. So whenever the user is asking for some task, this task is got by the orchestrator, and the orchestrator delegates the different subtasks. So I guess it's doing some kind of divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
You could call it. Separate the whole query into different tasks and delegate into the different AI agents to do their own thing. And then those AI agents will connect to the different tools, being browser, being whatever, any other tool, and do the different tasks assigned to, and then return the output to the orchestrator, and the orchestrator will gather everything and generate the output for the user. Is that right?
I think it really is. I think from what we saw so far, it really looks like that. There is another interesting thing. If you described it, the way we described it so far is remarkably similar to how a human would work through those tasks, right? It's very similar.
You outsource the tasks.
Yeah, I mean, of course, maybe you come up with, right, either you need the right tool, right? So you need the right website that you're going to visit for that specific thing, or maybe you need to ask someone else to do a specific thing. And then you, as you said, maybe then you write some Python code to do your analysis. There was another detail that, I mean, I'm sure they gave it the right tools to do it, right? To write and read markdown plain text file, markdown files. I saw in some demos it is keeping track of what it is doing. So it's got this to-do list, and it is just checking boxes in its to-do list. And I'd be really curious to know how that came to be. Is it something that they put in the system prompt, like go on and do this, or is it something that the model learned just by having that available, just by having a tool to write a markdown file and say, I'm gonna keep track of what I did and what I need to do in this file, so that the model can always have that in context. It's really interesting, because it's not something that is usually seen or described, or it wouldn't be considered to be needed the way LLM works. But it's interesting that it does have it. So it's producing that file, so it must mean something. And you can see it in the demo, because in between a step and another, it's actually checking the box, say, okay, I did this task, moving on to the next. Yeah, I find it really, really interesting.
But then, if this definition is right, going back to it can do anything, of course, we assume anything they mean virtually and not building a house.
Or maybe at some point it can build a house as well.
Maybe at some point they will, yes. But let's assume it's virtually with some internet connection. If that's the case, it's really, they cannot do anything, right? Like, because as you said, when you applied for the waiting list, you had to tell what do you want to use it for. And this is my assumption, but could it be that they do that because for every new request of a user, they need to build another AI agent or different AI agents to achieve that task? And if so, is that scalable?
Yeah, I also have that feeling. I have the feeling that that's what they're doing. Probably they need to hook it up to some data sources. Or maybe they just want to make sure that the moment you do try it out, considering all the hype they got, they want to make sure that it's going to be as smooth as possible.
I think it's a combination.
Probably it's a mix of things. It's complicated. And maybe they don't have to create anything, or maybe in some cases even adding a new data source is going to be, they're going to ask the tool itself to create it. So if you say whether it's scalable, I'm gonna assume it probably is. I mean, it's already wild that we can do such things now, and I mean the fact that we can build so much more than before is undeniable. There is still loads of challenges building products. I mean, come on, even with all these vibe coding things and AI software developers doing pull requests for you, it's a force multiplier, but you still need to apply some of that. You still need some of that knowledge building things. So obviously I'm sure they still have a lot of work to do. At the same time, yeah, it's already wild that they can do such things. So I'm sure it's not going to be a problem for them to add even more data sources and more tools that they can make available to Manus. But yeah, saying that he can do anything is a long shot.
So all these questions, I've been trying to kind of lead you to one topic. I'm not a professional interviewer, as you know.
Are you interviewing me?
Yes. The idea is that, right? Like one of us does the interview and the other one is answering. And since you are more techie than me, I'm the interviewer. I took the role.
I didn't realize. It felt like a normal conversation between us.
I try to do both, but it's difficult, right? Because someone needs to lead the conversation to some place. Otherwise, we would just go wild and end up talking about, I don't know, Trump.
Yeah, probably. Also, it would take hours, right? We could go on for hours discussing things.
Exactly. And then the edition would be a nightmare. It's already a nightmare for 1 hour. So imagine 10 hours. Going back to our topic, I was doing all these questions because saying that it can do anything is the idea of this concept called AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, which we could define in a simple way as an AI doing exactly what a human does, right? Like it can learn anything by itself and do many different things. There is no limit. Like if one artificial intelligence is focusing or its skill is to, I don't know, fry an egg, it could also build a house, right? Maybe I can find a better definition.
But the thing, that's the thing, right? I mean, there is no real definition of it. Everybody likes to come up with their own definition of it so that it's suitable whatever they're trying to sell you, usually.
But especially it's difficult when you try to find non-technical words, right? That's why I get stuck sometimes. Like, until we don't know what is our target audience, we really need to be careful getting too technical. The last episode was easier not to get technical, right? More philosophical. But today is really hard. But in general, that would be the idea of putting general in the whole name, is because it can do anything. So could we assume that Manus is an AGI already?
I find it, honestly, personally, I find it to be such a meaningless definition and sort of a pointless discussion that I don't even want to go into it. I mean, it's moving the goalposts all the time anyway, and as I said, being a different thing to whoever you talk to. And I mean, AI is, I don't know, probably even has a bad name. Even the fact alone that it's called artificial intelligence is probably a bad name for it.
What's intelligence anyway?
And what's intelligence? I mean, it's not even sure if that's what defines us as humans. So yeah, I don't know. Whenever I get into this discussion, I remember of the Futurama episode where somehow the professor manages to make Bender feel emotions, something like that. It's a pretty wild and ridiculous episode. I love the old I mean, the entire show is pretty good. the brightest of physicists, so they managed to throw in some crazy references. But anyway, yeah, it's this kind of discussion would be more for a show like Futurama than actual professionals, in my opinion, because it doesn't get us any nearer to useful business outcomes, which is, in the end, to be honest, it's what I care about. If I think a tool like Manus is a brilliant, really groundbreaking tool for many business outcomes. That's what I really care about. That's what I really like. So this fact that you can orchestrate other tools through natural language is absolutely wild. And then when we the idea that we keep moving the needle there, right? That we go that maybe at some point it will build a house. Yes, because we've got 3D printers that can build houses, and we almost have cars that can drive themselves. So you could say you could have an AI driving, deciding that a car should go from A to B and move stuff and set up a printer. I don't know. I mean, you could do so many things. Or the idea that you could have an AI even delegate to humans. You could have an AI at some point deciding that it needs to delegate some activity to some humans, whatever that activity is. Again, forget about the building a house thing, but this idea that you can have interactions between AI and human, this human in the loop, can be a pretty crazy thing. So that the human can keep doing what they're best at, and the AI can keep doing their thing. I think this is absolutely brilliant. Because again, if we go back to the thing of building a house, what does it even mean to build a house nowadays? Who is building a house? Is it the architect? Is it the people on the ground? Actually, the bricklayers, is it the carpenters? Is it the owner, the one who's putting in the money? Who's building the house? I mean, it's a complex task. You need many professionals. You need many heads. And is AI capable of building a house? I don't know. Maybe it can replace the project manager. Just saying. Could be true of many other cases, actually.
No offense.
No offense to project managers. Sorry if you are a single listener. Maybe Jira could do much more, Would that mean that suddenly it's building software? Well, yes. I mean, it is building software already. No, I'm saying, right? I mean, it's a very complex topic. There are so many interactions. And it's this thing that you can have different AI agents interact with each other or interact with humans is absolutely wild.
Going back to the business topic, they call Manus as well a ChatGPT wrapper, which is also a broad concept because not everything is running on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And for instance, unit text could be also considered a ChatGPT wrapper, although it's not running on ChatGPT, but a different model. But it's still, let's simplify it, a foundational model wrapper. So basically an application that is running or relying on a foundational model.
Yes.
And it seems that this is where the market is going towards, right? Because it doesn't make sense nowadays unless you're crazy enough and you have millions and millions, probably even billions of dollars, you will not build your own foundational model. I mean, you would be crazy to do that. So it seems that the market now is starting this application layer. It's kind of like the cloud providers, right? We have certain cloud providers and no one is thinking about creating your own cloud infrastructure, right? I mean, there are people still crazy enough to do that. But for us, for instance, it doesn't make any sense because we have already big players and it's really difficult to compete with those unless you're bringing really a huge added value on top of them, which probably they will crash or replicate in a couple of days. So it seems that it's happening the same with AI. And unit text, as I said before, is what we could call a foundational model wrapper. But that brings some challenges when it comes to businesses, right? One thing is depending the technological risk. So we depend too much on the foundational model provider, and then they could increase costs, could do some upgrades, and create some bugs, some breaking changes that could affect our operations. And then also on the business side, the lack of a moat, right? Like the defensive business model that prevents other people to replicate you. So what do you think? How could we avoid these challenges?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like they're all.
You were not prepared for this one, eh?
I kind of was, but I feel like not any of those is a good argument. I don't even know where to start. Let's put it like that. The old thing about moats, for example, I don't believe in that at all. It seems to me that's not how businesses ever worked. Or any ideas ever worked, actually. It seems there's actually a name for this. Whenever the same idea is developed in parallel, but without each inventor knowing about the other. This thing has a name. It's an important concept, but can't remember right now. But it happened many times in history. Like there were people, were scientists, were researchers discovering the same thing at the same time. They didn't even know each other. They didn't even know the other one existed. So it's not like one was copying from the other. They genuinely weren't. It's just the fact that things before them evolved up to a point that at that point in time, that specific discovery was inevitable. So if it wasn't them, it would have been somebody else. So everything was prepared for them so that that point, that discovery just had to happen. And it's really, I don't know, I always felt it's a crazy thing to think about, but it's just how we work, like as humans. So we get to a point where everything falls into the right place. And I always like this concept defining an idea as a combination of other ideas. So to come up with, say, what they say, it's a novel idea, doesn't mean it comes out of thin air. It means you took some previous existing ideas, combined them in a new way, and came up with something new. And it's just a definition, right, of that. It's just one way how you could define an idea. I love it because it's also recursive, like you can keep digging deeper and deeper. And this is similar to how businesses operate, let's be honest. I mean, there are things that we're doing now that we can only do because AI, LLMs evolved in a certain way. You just couldn't do it before. Just couldn't. And if you managed or tried to do it anyway, probably you would have failed anyway with that usual thing like, we came too early. it was too early. We launched before the market was ready. You hear it so often. They get people doing something supposedly great, they failed, and a couple of years later, another 3 companies come and they're doing the exact same thing, and they take over. So yeah, you end up having competition. Of course, you end up having more companies doing the same thing. Look at it with foundational models. Initially, it looked like OpenAI and ChatGPT, nobody could get there, but the reality was that just as they figured out how to do their thing, because also let's go back to that time, right? A couple of years ago, they figured out that a way to build, let's say, huge models with really billions of parameters, to do it in a cheaper way. But they were also building on previous research. So they were building on research from, I think, 2015 that came from was Google engineers, right? The transformer stuff. So they were building on existing research. And it was obvious that there were other people working on the same thing at the same time. So yeah, they arrived first, but then others came, and suddenly it wasn't so novel anymore. I mean, what kind of moat could they have had that defended them? They didn't even need it, because I mean, look where they are now. Still, they still did something impressive because they did many other things right, I would guess. That's where business is. You need to do many things right. It's not so much about being the only one able to do a certain thing.
But it's true, we cannot compare the application layer, we cannot compare it with the foundational model layer, right? I mean, building your own foundational model requires a lot of investment. So that per se is already a moat for many people. You really need to raise a lot of money to create your own foundational model just for the training.
Yeah, but again, many others did it. There are many others that did it, right? DeepSeek managed to do it.
Many.
Well,
what do you mean with many?
let's turn it. I'd wanted to bring it on another level actually, because I think the feeling I have, it's like we are in the 80s and we are discussing the completely wrong thing. How many? There are many layers of abstraction. One of the foundational concepts why modern software engineering works is thanks to abstraction.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was very young. I was like, I think I was 11 or so, 11 or 12 when I recently started learning about software engineering. And I went to a talk by Barbara Liskov. She's one of the say most brilliant minds in software engineering, I would say. One of the most revolutionary minds of software engineering. And I really loved that talk. And it was all about abstraction. I mean, that's what her research has, I think, her entire career has been dedicated to researching and talking about the abstraction in software engineering. And I always felt like that's probably the most important concept that brought us to where we are today with software engineering. The idea that you can abstract away some parts and build on top, and you don't always have to start from scratch. I mean, obviously, you could argue it kind of applies in many industries, but not as much as software engineering. I think this could get its own podcast episode. It's an incredibly interesting concept all around, approaching it for so many angles. But again, I mean, go back to, let's say, the 80s, the 90s. Back then, it was all about building new silicon and building new CPU architectures. And it felt like that's where you could be innovative, or where you could get all the advantage. And it's true, right? I mean, in the end, we got, out of that era, we got one CPU architecture. The others kind of disappeared until ARM somehow managed to get a good shot. You could say take over, and now there are probably more ARM CPUs than x86, 64, right? There are more ARM CPUs now. RISC-V at some point many years later. But it's an abstraction layer, right? I mean, nobody then needs to care so much about the architecture you're running on. Obviously, it's still interesting in some cases, but most software doesn't need to care. And then you could go one layer above and say, how many operating systems are there? I mean, really, you could say there are 3.
Mm-hmm.
You could honestly say there are 3. I mean, obviously, there are others that some other tried, but it's very few. So even with foundational models, even if you say, okay, what have we got? I mean, we've got Google, OpenAI, Meta, DeepSeek, yeah, or Microsoft. I mean, they also kind of tried. Actually, I still want to try out the model Phi, but why do others need to replicate that? Like, do you need to build your operating system just to build an app?
No, you don't have to. But if we talk about the application layer, the mode for those it is much lower or almost inexistent compared to a foundational model. Because,
Definitely.
as I said, like building your own foundational model, it requires a lot of resources in general.
Absolutely.
And many people cannot do that. You cannot just go there and build your own foundational model. It requires a lot of computing resources and a lot of money, a lot of energy. So that per se is already a moat. So you cannot replicate others. But when it comes to the application layer, on top of those, I mean, the concept ChatGPT wrapper is basically you build some nice UI, which is basically doing some prompt to a foundational model and showing the output. That's it. What is the mode of that, right? You could sell it. I mean, you could add marketing on top of it and say, this new tool is doing whatever. And this whatever could be something really revolutionary. But at the end, it's just some nice UI with a query going to some foundational model showing an output in a nice way.
Absolutely. And now again, going back to our analogy, let's think about apps, mobile apps.
Same.
How difficult can it be to replicate? I don't know. I'm just looking at apps on my mobile phone. I'm looking at the easiest one to implement, the one that you could implement in half a day. Like the calculator is actually, it's remarkably hard, as simple as it may look. I take Shazam. Shazam can be a good example actually. By now, the technology is pretty much, it's widely known. You can find clones of it. It doesn't even need much infrastructure to run. And yet, I mean, generally they're the only ones there. I don't think anyone managed to compete with them. Not even. I think there was even. I think Google even tried to replace them, like at the OS level. Actually, Google trying to replace it with their native voice search capabilities, and yet, I mean, I think they're still doing okay, and people are still downloading Shazam, and it's just, what is it? Is it the brand, the user interface, the fact that everybody is using it, the user experience?
Or they were the first one.
It's many things. It's not, yeah, maybe, but it's not always about being the first one. Not the only thing.
Yeah, tell MySpace.
The networks, right? The network, creating a network somewhere. If you manage to build up the critical mass, that.
I mean, there are different well-known modes, right? Like the network effect, the change. I think it's called change effect, or I don't know exactly if that's the name. So basically, if the service you are providing, you are so dependent on it that changing to a different provider is a nightmare. So that prevents you from changing to another provider, right? That's what I mean. This is the kind of mode that, for instance, banking software providers have, right? Mm-hmm. You cannot migrate to a different banking software provider every day, not even every year. So that's already a mode. If you gain a customer, you know that customer, you are keeping it for at least a couple of years. And it's not because of the product per se, it's just because changing to another one is a nightmare. It's so deep into your system or integrated into your core business that it's really hard to migrate. And it's so risky that it's better, even if you are a shitty provider, it's better to stay with you than change to another one, because the risks linked to it are too high. And like that, there are many different things, right? The brand is one of them. Like, you build such a strong brand that going with another provider, for instance, Coca-Cola, I mean, you could say it's this secret formula that makes it taste so good, but I don't think so, right? At the end, you go with Coca-Cola because of the brand. Because at this point, it's like, I mean, Pepsi also tastes good, right? I mean, there are people that don't like Coca-Cola and they like more Pepsi.
Yeah, I think Pepsi is better, actually.
Well, I disagree, but I guess it's a personal thing. But at the end, you go to those providers not because of the taste of it, because I tasted other replicas and they are also good, right? It doesn't matter. At the end, you go with them because it's the brand. So there are different things that make build this moat around your business model. So now the question is, what is the moat surrounding unit text?
I think one could be the network. I think we have some ideas. Now we need to see them in action.
Mm-hmm.
One idea could be to build a community around it, to build a network on it, a marketplace. All that, yeah, you could say that becomes a moat. I don't think you do it to build a moat. It's not the. I don't think that's how you start out. You don't do it like that. You do it to get more customers. But the moment you have more customers already, you get the thing exactly right. The network, you get the critical mass. It's like, you can't go wrong. It's the same as you say with Coca-Cola. So you can't go wrong drinking that because everybody's doing it. So where should I go? I should just go there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a complex discussion, yes.
It is.
But I don't see why AI is changing that in any way. It always has been. It's a hard thing in business, obviously. On the other end, I'm really happy we have competition. So I could say it's a good thing. I love that we need to think about that, and we need to we have the chance to have competition because well, we shouldn't take it for granted, right? It's not the same everywhere, and
No, of course.
it's actually a very good thing that we have competition because that can bring out the best the best solutions. And this is about that. This is about building the best solution. It's not about making sure your customers cannot leave. Because you bring, for example, you brought that example of like, let's say, enterprise software. We come from that world, and we have seen what it can do. And knowing that your customer cannot leave doesn't produce a good outcome. In the end, you're not. Maybe it's good for your business, but it
is, but it's not good for. I mean, the idea of capitalism is competition, right? Competition makes you be better, take care of your customer, because otherwise they will leave to other provider, right? So if you have this kind of mode, I agree with you, is counterproductive. It removes the value of this competition, right?
Yeah.
It creates little monopolies, and we know that monopolies are bad for the economy.
Yeah, and for society, in the end, I really say they're really bad for society at large at some point. One thing I would love to see, maybe if we go back to the mode of foundational models, considering how important they become. And if we go, I think that analogy going back to, let's say, silicon, or at least CPU architectures, I think that was actually a good analogy, considering how important they are and how much more important they are going to be. It would be really nice to see something happen truly in the open, because even Llama, which is probably the most open, maybe DeepSeek, I wouldn't know which one we could categorize as the most open source foundational model.
For sure, not Open AI.
Definitely not Open AI, right?
They should change their name at some point.
Closed AI. Proprietary AI. I mean, they went from being a foundation to a private business, which I'm not even sure how that can happen legally, but then again, I'm not a lawyer, so I would have no idea. But it sounds shady.
Yes.
It would be a pity, if everything we do here, again, it's good that we have competition, and it's good that we have. I don't want to be a zealot and say that's the only way. No, it's not true. It's good that people build businesses around this. It's everything. It's absolutely great, but it would be really nice to see something happen. To see something more in the open, maybe under the the hat of the Linux Foundation or something like that. Having some seriously open source project doing everything from the ground up. Even if you look at the way the Linux Foundation works, obviously it got many companies behind it, right? Many companies building on top of Linux and other systems owned by the Linux Foundation. But you get a bunch of company truly collaborating in the open, and the result is in the open and can be discussed by anyone and seen by anyone. And it's transparent and, again, available to society at large, also to build businesses on top. That would be a really nice outcome of this, or at least it would be nice if it happened now and not in 20 years. Like, again, thinking about CPU architecture, we mentioned RISC-V, which is finally trying to make its way through, but yeah, it's going to be very hard for them to really stand out. Now that you could say that AMD 64 is on decline somehow, but for sure ARM never has been this relevant, especially now with Apple building Apple Silicon and Nvidia growing as they are growing, and their plans for it. I mean,
I think when we started talking about CPU architectures, we lost half of our audience. So from 2 listeners, 1 listener. 1 listener is gone. But yeah, luckily we stick with our sole listener.
from Madagascar, it seems.
From Madagascar, exactly. That's another thing I forgot to mention. So it seems we got one email from all these, I don't know how to call them, like podcast trackers.
Chats, yeah.
And it seems that we are number 5 in technology, of podcast technology in Madagascar. We have, according to Spotify, we have 1.2% audience from Madagascar. So, guys from Madagascar,
thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
I'd love to visit Madagascar, in fact, at some point.
Me
It must
too.
be a great country.
Yeah. So let's do the product update because it's almost 1 hour already. We said already that Unique Text is live officially, although we will make it official on social media, Product Hunt, Hacker News as well, and then Indie Hackers. And Indie Hackers is already there. I didn't know it was published automatically. I was expecting something like Product Hunt that you can schedule, but no. In the moment you click post, it's there. It's available. And the other thing I wanted to discuss is this new opportunity we got in the event planning industry.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go into much detail, but maybe a quick summary and what we are working on. Maybe the challenge, not the technical challenge, but more the business per se. So could you give us a quick summary?
We got this very interesting discussion starting and Web Summit in Qatar, so from our company in the event management industry, and we're trying to figure out how to make the old, say, event planning, the party planning, more customizable by customers, so that customers can visualize what they're the event they're planning. And the idea again is that it's truly something that you couldn't do before, or at least you couldn't do it so quickly, you couldn't do it so cheaply. You maybe would have had to have a designer on Photoshop trying to adapt your images and come up with a proposal, or you had mood boards, and it's very complex for party planners to visualize what an event venue is going to actually look like.
So how is it done right now? Basically, if I'm a customer of these companies, I go through your different proposals. Maybe I want to organize a birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
You offer me kind of some proposals on your platform. I go through them. I choose one of them. And then we start the discussion about customizations, right? Different colors or different elements, different cake, many things, right? How does this work right now? How can I book those customizations?
I mean, in the end, it's a bit of trust. If you cannot see it and you don't have a picture of it anyway, you just need to trust that the planners will do the right thing. Quite a bit of back and forth you can discuss, and maybe again in the best case scenario you get either some separate pictures of the different items, what they could look like, or even again a best case scenario, somebody on Photoshop putting them together and giving you an idea of what it will look like, and then at least you can agree on something visual. But it's lengthy and expensive, and probably a very noisy and not very transparent process.
And this back and forth is done with a human, so that means money.
It would have to be, yeah, exactly. That would be the expensive part, definitely. But generative AI, so image generation in particular, we can do many interesting things. There are many steps. So of course everybody knows about. It's funny because again, now everybody knows about prompting to generate an image, the Dolly and or I don't know, Midjourney, or all those models. But there is so much more that you can do so much more with those models. You can transform existing images, and you can transform parts of existing images. You can do something called segmentation. You can extract parts of images and decide to only alter one or another. It becomes obviously a slightly more complex pipeline, but you can make so many transformations possible. It's even hard to describe all the possible combinations that you can do. And that in the end can give you a much more realistic feeling. You can keep the 3D space intact, and that's also another very interesting one. So you can make sure that you're not altering the proportions and the venue, right? In this case, the area in which you're placing elements, removing elements. And so we intend to build something there that, as we thought about it, could be even useful outside this industry alone. Could even be used in other cases. Now we are trying to figure out how, let's say, what is the best approach to make this happen, to make something that can also be used in other industries, by other companies. There are many options to do that. But for sure, I would say that the biggest challenge, if we look at it, let's say, from a technical but also business perspective, is the fact that with AI evolving so quickly and so many options out there, this only makes sense the moment you have a very well-defined interface to the outside world, and you keep managing this and you keep evolving this. It's funny because this, I think, for example, this connects us back to the discussion we were having before. Obviously, we are not here designing completely novel models, but that wouldn't be so valuable because it's not so valuable to businesses. Businesses don't need yet another CPU or another operating system. They just need to solve their business problem. And there is so much value in this, and it's what we've always done anyway with different tools, but that's what we've always done anyway. We were problem solvers. So not everybody needs to be a researcher creating completely new things. It's obviously super valuable. It's just that that's not what most businesses need directly. And covering that last mile is everything about this, let's say, GPT wrapper. I mean, I'm just going to call all software a CPU wrapper from now on, probably, because you're not building your own CPU to build your application. Yeah, it's the same here.
And what's the difference between using a pipeline with different models, focusing each one of them on different tasks in the whole process of manipulating this picture, compared to just using GPT or Gemini that can manipulate already the pictures according to your requirements?
I'd say it's got everything to do with precision, with everything has got to do with the way, going back again to something we discussed initially, to the way the AI interacts with the humans. The problem we started from was there is some issue with the communication. That's the business problem that we're trying to solve. So there is a mismatch between the expectation in the mind of the user, of the customer, and what the planner is doing. So just communicating that in natural language was not enough. I'm telling you, I'm describing something to you, but unless I'm very precise, or even if I manage to be very precise, whatever the definition of precision is going to be, in that communication, something is going to go lost. There will be some noise in our communication, will be something that will be lost, and you will imagine a different thing. Well, you can imagine that the model would do the same. So if you just try to explain to the image generation model whatever you want in words with prompts, something is going to go lost. And well, I mean, you just copied the issue we had before, the same business we had before, the same issue. You just translated that into an automated system. But now, instead of a human hallucinating, imagining things, it's not hallucinating per se, just imagining things in a different way, right? You are describing something, but the other is imagining something else. Whereas what we really want to do here is more to do with a specific way, specific interaction model, it's specific user experience that we're trying to build. And that's where you may need different models, because you've got different specialized pieces that are doing different things, and they come into play at the different stages. So for example, we talked about segmentation. the idea that out of an image, you can pinpoint the balloons in the picture. And you want the user to be able to click on the balloons and say, okay, I want to do something with this. Segmentation model can do that. Say, what do you want to take out at these coordinates in the image? You could say a human can do that as well. Yeah, if you're sitting next to them or if you're sharing your screen and pointing at it, that's pretty much the same. So that's what we're doing with different models. We're breaking up these tasks so that there can be human interaction at the right level. And again, this is, I would say, it still goes back to where companies like ours can bring value. It comes down to user interfaces and user experience and understanding a problem, really, understanding what the problem was and finding the best technical solution how to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean coming up with something completely novel. It's about, again, combining existing ideas into something new.
The deadline is Wednesday next week to present a prototype. Are we managing?
Yeah, I think we should.
Very optimistic always. I like that.
We're still software engineers and we're very bad at estimates.
I mean, Elon Musk is not a software engineer, probably is the worst in doing estimations. By now we should be in Mars already. Anyway, I think we ran out of time already. We definitely need to start recording again during the mornings. I'm completely tired. I don't know if our audience could
It's
notice.
also Friday.
It's also Friday. Yeah, we are quite busy with our products. But yeah, we still feel optimistic. And yeah, hopefully we hear you again next week. Have a nice week.
Talk to you next week. Bye.